raises a number of questions. Who is this character, Balaam? He's a very unusual character because he's a Gentile and yet somehow is prominent in that era. The word Balaam really means Lord of the people, but in this case it's his name. He's a form. The word implies a foreigner. Also, it's used as a glutton. He's the son of Beor. He was a man of some rank among the Midianites, is the point in Numbers 31 and elsewhere. He resided at Pethor in Mesopotamia, so he's a prophet from Mesopotamia, which is the only occasion we know of in the Scripture. So he dwells among idolaters, but he apparently had some knowledge of the true God. He was held in such reputation that it was supposed that whom he blessed would be blessed and whom he cursed would be cursed. So the very fact that he's hired to do that is a strange standing that he has among them. And but he's on the take. He's hireable to get the answers that you want, you know. You think he came from Chicago or something, perhaps. Anyway, when the Israelites were encamped on the plains of Moab, east of the Jordan, Balak was sent for Balaam from Aram, out of the mountains of the east, to curse them. But by the remarkable interposition, God interferes with this. He was utterly unable to fulfill Balak's wish. He was hired to deliver a result, and God won't let him do that. And he desired to do that, but God wouldn't let him. In fact, you may recall this peculiar incident with his own donkey. God used the donkey to rebuke the prophet. The donkey, he actually spoke, according to Numbers 22. Very strange incident in the Bible. The Apostle Peter makes reference to this as a historical event, and when he speaks of the way of Balaam, alluding to his selling his gift. He apparently had some kind of gift that people recognized. He sold it for money, and that was what Peter calls the way of Balaam. In the Scripture, you're going to have the way of Balaam, the error of Balaam, and the doctrine of Balaam. They're not exactly the same thing, so I'll leave it to you to sort those things out. The way of Balaam is Peter's term, alluding to his selling his gift, that he's taking a bribe in effect. But in addition, God did not permit them, to the Israelites, to be cursed, and so he intervenes in a very strange way. But Balak takes Balaam, the king has this hireling prophet, on 4 different mountaintops, one at a time. But Balaam could not curse Israel. That's what he's hired to do. He gets to the mountain. He can't do it. And so God is intervening he's a very strange character. God is intervening in a very strange way. But God would not allow any man to curse his people. So you might study Genesis chapter 12, verses 2 and 3 very carefully, and there's allusions to this in Psalm 105. But as Balaam looked down, that's something most people would miss unless they've been a student of or learned the Bible in 24 hours or one of our other analyses here. Most people would miss, what did Balaam see? He's up on top of the hill. He's to curse Israel for the benefit of the king. But he's not allowed to, God won't let him do that. But it's perhaps very instructive to get a glimpse of what did Balaam see as he looked from the mountains of Moab down on the camp of Israel. Well, as we study in Numbers chapter 2, obviously the numbers of each of the tribes are there, all 12 of them, and they're camped in 4 camps. 4 of them are called the camp of Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Another group were called Reuben, Simeon, and Gad. Those 3 tribes were the camp of Reuben. Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin, the camp of Ephraim, and Dan, Asher, and Naphtali, the camp of Dan. 4 camps. Now, if we tally, it's going to be useful for us to tally the collective camp sizes. And Judah tallies up to 186,000. And these are only the men over 20 able to go to war. It doesn't count the women and children. So they're estimators in a sense of what that size would be of each camp. But we have the 4 camps laid out. The largest being Judah, the smallest being Ephraim, and both Reuben and Dan roughly the same size. Well, what's interesting, if you study carefully the instructions in the Torah, how they are to camp, the camp of Judah was to be east of the Levites. The Levites camp in the middle with the tabernacle. They become some kind of standard because Judah camps east of them, the camp of Reuben south of them, and if you read the text, one thing you have to give them credit for, they tried very hard to follow the letter of the law precisely, to a fault in some cases. But strict obedience to this would deny the non-cardinal points of the compass, in other words, the area of southeast. Only cardinal directions are ordained for their encampments. And the width of Levites' camp, don't know what it was, but whatever it was some kind of standard, okay? So the length would be proportional to the population. Here's what I'm getting at. The Levites are right in the middle with three families, the Gershonites, Kohathites, and Merathites, and then to the east side with Moses and the priests. Altogether about 22,000. All right. But Judah was to camp east of the camp. Its symbol was the lion of the tribe of Judah, for all three tribes that made up that camp. But they would camp as wide as the Levites could, and Reuben was instructed to camp south. His tribal standard was the man, and he would... Now the enigma comes, what do you do with this area that you and I would call the southeast? That's not a cardinal point. Who would camp there? That's a question mark. Well, it turns out that Reuben would not be south of that unless he was south of the Levites. If he's going to be south of the Levites, that's very specific. Judah to the south. So that tells us that there are four areas that would not be camped upon: southeast, southwest, northwest, northeast. And so Ephraim was to the west side, and Dan to the north. Each were there. So we notice right away the four camps: lion, man, ox, and eagle, being the ensigns of the lead tribe for those four camps. That's one reason we use those little symbols in the institute as trail markers for some of our study goals and so forth. Okay, but how big are these? Well, if they're confined to those units, they're going to be their length of those arms will be proportional to their populations. And so if we are Balaam looking down from the hill and seeing the camp of Israel, this is sort of what we're going to be seeing. And so in the proportions, it turns out that the longest one is to the east, the shortest one to the west, and the north and south approximately the same. And what's startling to recognize is that Balaam is looking down, he would see a cross. That may not have any relevance to him, but obviously it's one of those things that we discover by simply looking carefully at Numbers chapter 2, and yet is again, it's sort of like the serpent in the wilderness, a strange symbol that emerges in their wanderings that's not explained anywhere in the Old Testament. Jesus himself, though, points out that the volume of the book is written of me. And as Moses raised up the serpent in the wilderness, so shall the Son of Man be raised up. Well, what's rather provocative, it would seem, at least, that if you sketch out a literal adherence to the instructions of the camp, we find, again, as God looks down, we see a cross. And we also see those four faces, if you will, that then get emblazoned in the cherubim and in a number of passages in Isaiah 6, Ezekiel 10, and Revelation 4 and 5, and so forth. The four faces that dominate the throne of God. We have that imagery, interestingly, reflected here in these instructions.